Well, we're going to see. It's a negotiation that's just starting, and they've been fighting, and there's been a lot of land that's been taken. So we'll have to see how that works out. That's part of the negotiation. I will say there was great unity in that room today. We were via Skype or whatever, but it was great, tremendous unity today in that room with the other countries. I was very impressed by it.
In today's video, we will delve into the recent White House meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and French President Emmanuel Macron. This significant meeting touches on several vital issues, most notably the ongoing war in Ukraine. The situation in Ukraine has drawn much international attention, with various world leaders weighing in on the complex geopolitical and military situation. This particular conversation between Trump and Macron stands out, as it involves direct dialogue between two key global figures discussing a potential path toward resolving the conflict that has raged since 2014, escalating dramatically in February 2022. At the heart of the discussions was the issue of peace in Ukraine, specifically regarding the possibility of European involvement in the peacekeeping process. President Trump made an intriguing suggestion during the meeting, positing that Russian President Vladimir Putin might be open to the idea of allowing European peacekeepers to be stationed in Ukraine. According to Trump, this could serve as a critical step toward facilitating peace and providing a resolution to the war. He hinted that peacekeepers, who would be neutral parties, could offer a solution to ensure the protection of Ukrainian citizens while also negotiating the land disputes at the core of the conflict. Trump's remarks underscore his interest in moving beyond the battlefield and toward diplomatic negotiations that could lead to an end to hostilities. However, the situation is far from simple, and the complexity of the war in Ukraine cannot be overstated. The war itself involves not only territorial disputes between Ukraine and Russia, but also a web of international interests, including those of NATO, the European Union, and other regional powers. The conflict is deeply intertwined with long-standing political and military tensions between Russia and the West. It is these tensions that have made any resolution so elusive. While President Trump's suggestion of European peacekeepers may seem like an innovative idea, it also raises numerous questions. Would Russia, which has long opposed foreign involvement in Ukraine, truly agree to such a proposal? And even if they did, what impact would this have on the broader military and political landscape of the region? In the course of the meeting, French President Emmanuel Macron responded to President Trump's comments, offering a different perspective on the situation. Macron, who has been actively engaged in diplomatic efforts regarding Ukraine, explained that Europe is not merely offering aid to Ukraine, but is doing so in the form of loans, not grants. This distinction is crucial as it reflects the heavy financial burden that European nations are shouldering in support of Ukraine's war efforts. Macron emphasized that this loan-based support system means that European countries are deeply invested in the conflict, both financially and strategically. Unlike grants, which do not require repayment, loans carry with them the expectation of eventual repayment. This adds an extra layer of responsibility for European nations, especially considering the immense costs associated with the war. Macron's comments highlight the practical realities of Europe's involvement in the war. While much of the attention has been focused on military support and humanitarian aid, the financial component is just as important. Europe's loans to Ukraine come at a time when many European nations are already grappling with their own economic challenges, particularly in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. The need for continued financial support to Ukraine has placed additional strain on European economies, and this, in turn, has affected public opinion in several countries. Macron's remarks serve as a reminder that Europe's role in this conflict is not just about sending weapons and humanitarian aid. It also involves making significant economic sacrifices that could have long-term consequences for the region. During the meeting, Macron also addressed the issue of diplomacy, making it clear that he is using his personal relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin to help craft a potential deal to end the war. Macron has long been a proponent of dialogue with Russia, and his efforts in this area have been closely watched by the international community. Unlike many Western leaders who have adopted a more confrontational stance toward Putin, Macron has sought to engage with the Russian leader directly, believing that diplomacy is the key to finding a peaceful solution to the crisis. Macron's personal rapport with Putin has allowed him to serve as an intermediary of sorts, facilitating communication between Russia and Western powers. This approach has been met with mixed reactions. On one hand, Macron's willingness to engage with Putin has been praised by some as a pragmatic and constructive way to address the crisis. After all, peace cannot be achieved without dialogue, and Macron's role in fostering communication between the two sides could prove crucial in breaking the deadlock. On the other hand, critics argue that engaging with Putin without stronger conditions or consequences could embolden Russia and undermine efforts to hold the Kremlin accountable for its actions in Ukraine. The dilemma lies in finding the balance between diplomatic engagement and ensuring that Russia faces the necessary pressure to end its aggression. One of the key points that Macron emphasized during the meeting was Europe's long-term commitment to Ukraine. While European countries may be shouldering a significant financial burden now, Macron made it clear that Europe views its support for Ukraine as an investment in the future of the continent. The war in Ukraine is seen as a direct challenge to the stability of Europe, and as such, European leaders are determined to see it through to the end, even if it requires considerable sacrifice. Macron's remarks underscore the broader strategic implications of the war, not just for Ukraine, but for the entire European continent. The conflict in Ukraine is viewed by many as a test of Europe's ability to defend its values and its territorial integrity in the face of external aggression. At the same time, President Trump's approach to the war in Ukraine is also notable for its focus on finding a pragmatic solution. While his suggestion of European peacekeepers may be seen by some as overly simplistic, it reflects his desire to explore options that could bring an end to the fighting. Trump has long been skeptical of U.S. military involvement in overseas conflicts, and his presidency was marked by efforts to reduce America's role in international military engagements. In his meeting with Macron, Trump reiterated his belief that the United States should not be the primary military actor in the Ukraine crisis and that European nations should take on a greater responsibility for the situation. This divergence in approaches between Trump and Macron highlights the differing priorities of the United States and Europe when it comes to the war in Ukraine. While the U.S. has provided significant military and financial support to Ukraine, there has been a growing debate about the long-term role of the United States in the conflict. Trump's focus on European peacekeepers and his emphasis on European responsibility may resonate with some in the U.S. who believe that Europe should take the lead in resolving the crisis. Meanwhile, Macron's emphasis on financial loans and diplomatic engagement underscores Europe's deep commitment to the war effort, both in terms of military support and economic sacrifices. Ultimately, the meeting between President Trump and President Macron underscores the complexity of the situation in Ukraine and the diverse approaches taken by world leaders to address it. The war in Ukraine is not just a regional conflict, but a global one, with implications for international security, the economy, and geopolitics. As the situation continues to evolve, the international community will need to find ways to navigate these challenges and work toward a peaceful resolution. Whether through military support, financial aid, or diplomatic negotiations, the road to peace will be difficult. But it is a goal that the global community cannot afford to abandon. In conclusion, the meeting between Donald Trump and Emmanuel Macron was an important moment in the ongoing discourse about the war in Ukraine. While President Trump suggested the possibility of European peacekeepers playing a role in the resolution of the conflict, President Macron emphasized the European financial commitment to Ukraine and his personal diplomatic efforts with Vladimir Putin. Both leaders are grappling with the complex realities of the war, each bringing their own perspective and priorities to the table. The discussion highlights the multifaceted nature of the crisis and the challenges faced by world leaders in attempting to bring about a lasting peace.
This is, we speak about frozen assets. We already used them to back precisely the loans negotiated at the G7.
In today's video, we explore the critical discussions that took place during the White House meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and French President Emmanuel Macron, focusing on the ongoing war in Ukraine and its broader implications for international relations. This meeting was particularly significant as it revolved around major geopolitical issues, including the future of U.S.-European relations, the frozen Russian assets, and the prospects for peace in Ukraine. The war in Ukraine has been a pressing concern for world leaders, with differing approaches to resolving the conflict and its associated challenges. One of the major topics during the meeting was the future of U.S.-European relations. President Trump, in his characteristic style, emphasized his desire to stabilize these relations and draw a distinction between the U.S. and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Trump reiterated his stance on Ukraine, stating that he expected the war to be over soon, possibly within a matter of weeks. While this statement seemed optimistic, it raised questions about the practicality of ending such a complex and protracted conflict in such a short time. The situation in Ukraine, as President Macron would later clarify, is deeply complicated and far from straightforward. The war is characterized by territorial disputes, entrenched geopolitical interests, and international ramifications that make any definitive timeline for peace difficult to predict. President Trump's assertion that the war in Ukraine could be resolved in a matter of weeks also raised concerns about the level of optimism expressed without acknowledging the numerous obstacles that stand in the way of peace. The ongoing fighting in Ukraine, combined with the political, military, and diplomatic complexities of the war, makes a quick resolution seem unlikely. Still, Trump's statement reflects his general approach to global conflicts, focusing on achievable outcomes and encouraging optimism. The reality, however, is that a multitude of issues, from the involvement of NATO to the question of Ukrainian sovereignty and Russia's aggression, must be addressed before any significant breakthrough can occur. Thus, while Trump's comments may have provided hope for a swift end to the war, it remains to be seen whether such optimism can translate into meaningful diplomatic action. Macron's response to Trump's assessment was more grounded in the practicalities of the war. Macron stressed the importance of his ongoing diplomatic engagement with Russian President Putin and the need to ensure that any peace agreement is both sustainable and responsible. Macron's approach has been more measured than Trump's, focusing on long-term solutions and acknowledging the many challenges that remain. Throughout the meeting, the French president emphasized the significance of dialogue and maintaining a level of communication with Russia, which he believes is critical in resolving the conflict. Macron has played an active role in attempting to mediate between Russia and Ukraine, attempting to use his personal relationship with Putin to secure some form of peaceful settlement. While this strategy has been met with skepticism by some, Macron's insistence on diplomacy continues to underscore his belief that the war cannot be solved purely through military means. Another key conversation during the meeting involved the issue of frozen Russian assets, a topic that has garnered considerable international attention since the onset of the conflict. In line with sanctions imposed by the West, Russian assets have been frozen in various countries around the world. These assets, which include financial holdings, real estate, and other forms of wealth, have been a focal point of discussions regarding accountability for Russia's aggression in Ukraine. Macron explained that these assets are frozen under international law, but the profits generated from them could be used to help fund Ukraine's war effort. Macron clarified that while the assets themselves cannot be liquidated due to legal restrictions, their profits could serve as a potential source of financial support for Ukraine. This proposal introduces an interesting avenue for providing Ukraine with much-needed resources without violating international legal frameworks. The issue of Russian assets is highly contentious, as it strikes at the heart of international law and the question of how to hold Russia accountable for its actions. Macron's statement suggests that Europe is committed to finding ways to leverage these frozen assets to aid Ukraine without breaching legal norms. The concept of using profits generated from these assets to support Ukraine has been viewed as a creative solution that could offer financial relief to Ukraine while maintaining respect for legal frameworks. However, this approach is not without its challenges. The legal complexities involved in seizing or utilizing these assets are substantial, and any such move would likely face opposition from Russia, which could claim that such actions constitute theft or further escalation of the conflict. While Macron presented this proposal as a potential way forward, it remains unclear how widely this idea will be embraced, both in Europe and in the United States. President Trump's position on the issue was not as fully detailed, but his involvement in these discussions highlights the need for consensus among Western nations on how to handle Russia's frozen assets. The fate of these assets is crucial, as it is one of the many ways in which the West can exert pressure on Russia while providing tangible support to Ukraine. At the same time, the issue remains complicated by the fact that such financial actions could further strain relations between the West and Russia, potentially escalating the conflict in unintended ways. One area of contention between the U.S. and Europe that emerged during the meeting was the relative contributions of each side to Ukraine's war effort. President Trump, in his remarks, claimed that the United States had provided the most aid to Ukraine, including significant military and financial support. However, President Macron countered this claim, pointing out that Europe, in fact, has contributed more financial aid to Ukraine than the United States. This remark highlights the differing perspectives on the financial burden of the war and reflects the broader tensions between the U.S. and European nations regarding their respective roles in supporting Ukraine. Macron's response also underscores the fact that Europe's financial contribution to Ukraine is often underappreciated in the public discourse, with much of the media focus being on U.S. military aid. Macron's clarification served as an important reminder that Europe is shouldering a significant portion of the financial burden, and that the scale of this commitment must be acknowledged in discussions about the war. As for the future of Ukraine, both Trump and Macron indicated that ongoing negotiations were essential to finding a solution. President Trump suggested that a deal for Ukraine could eventually be signed, though details remain unclear. At the same time, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, in response to the potential deal-making, made it clear that he was not willing to share Ukraine's mineral profits with the United States. This statement further complicates the negotiations, as the issue of Ukraine's natural resources, specifically its rich mineral wealth, remains a central point of contention in any potential peace agreement. Zelensky's refusal to share mineral profits is indicative of the broader challenges that Ukraine faces in negotiating with both the U.S. and Russia. While Ukraine is in urgent need of both military and financial assistance, it is also fiercely protective of its sovereignty and resources. The issue of Ukraine's natural wealth has long been a point of interest for foreign powers, and any agreement involving Ukraine's mineral resources would need to carefully balance Ukraine's interests with the demands of other nations. In conclusion, the meeting between Presidents Trump and Macron marked a crucial moment in the ongoing war in Ukraine and the shifting dynamics of international politics. While President Trump expressed optimism about the possibility of ending the war in a matter of weeks, President Macron offered a more cautious perspective, emphasizing the importance of diplomacy and ongoing negotiations. The issue of Russian frozen assets was another key topic, with Macron proposing that the profits from these assets could be used to help Ukraine, a suggestion that is still under consideration. Meanwhile, discussions about Ukraine's financial contributions and mineral wealth continue to complicate the prospects for a long-term peace deal. As both leaders agreed, much remains to be done, and the outcome of these discussions will have a lasting impact on global politics and the future of the war in Ukraine. What do you think? Can the war in Ukraine end soon? How will the issue of frozen Russian assets be resolved? We'd love to hear your thoughts, so let us know in the comments below. If you liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.